2 million years after humanity's extinction, a mother gave birth to a worthless child before being struck by lightning. And the ugly baby lost all of his bodily parts except for his disgusting skull. Because on the day he was born, his father found God in a ghetto temple, but as God tried to run away, he killed him with his sword and tried to make a deal with the 12 heavenly demons, swearing to sacrifice his firstborn to become the strongest leader in the world. So after Dago told the midwife to kill his son and hide all the evidence, the fat ass witch made it to a river where she was about to drown the useless child. But when she saw a boat in the distance, she decided to cast him down the river instead, and as soon as the disgusting hag pushed him away, a legendary demon appeared to devour her. However, an ugly blind elder sensed the presence of the demon, and used his blade to slash it down with a single strike. Before realizing there was a baby in the boat, with God's ancient power radiating from his insides. On the other side of the world, a man dragged a pathetic victim to crucify him, along with all the other enemy soldiers they defeated. But when he saw his wife getting accidentally killed by his own knights, the man couldn't bear it anymore, and decided to isekai himself by passionately hugging the ground. However, the man somehow survived and became colorblind, but when he approached a mysterious boat, he saw the body of the dismembered baby that was still alive. Throughout the years, the man began raising the disgusting child, and even created fake limbs and skin for him. But he realized that the child couldn't feel any pain, and lacked all emotions. So he named him Hyakimaru, after the Japanese word for 100 demons, and spent his entire life training him to become the coldest super soldier in the world. But after killing thousands of demons and being covered in their blood, Hyakimaru's godly powers activated, regenerating the leg he'd been missing. By the time he turned 16, the old man wished he taught Hyakimaru how to do anything except killing. However, Hyakimaru tried feeling his face for the first time, and hugged onto the man that raised him as if he was his father, before leaving him forever. For the next 3 billion years, Hyakimaru began traveling the world without ever eating, until one day, he saw a child called Dororo, getting beaten for stealing money from 3 oppressive men. But before the men left, Dororo launched a stone at their leader's eye, so the fatso began drowning Dororo, and ordered his men to bring the sword for killing him. As they walked away, however, they saw Hyakimaru in the distance, but he was looking past them at the demon he noticed in the river. Just then, the demon launched and devoured the fat ass with a single strike, so the other lackeys began running away. But the demon swallowed them up as well. As it was about to eat Dororo, Hyakimaru slashed its arm off and threw Dororo away, before running to evade its attacks and destroy the bridge. The beast continued attempting to swallow him, but Hyakimaru continued slashing the foundations of the bridge, causing it to collapse as the monster was chasing him, and killing the demon underneath all the rubble. In that moment, Hyakimaru's mask fell off, and he regained his skin as lightning blasted in the distance, destroying one of the 12 demons. At the same time, Dago's second son showed his mother the dove he caught, but she couldn't stop missing her first son, and stared at the statue of the goddess that sacrificed herself on that day. Eventually, the two of them began traveling to a neighboring village. But along the way, Dororo realized that although Hyakimaru was blind, he was able to see the outline of their souls, and was able to find the demons by the red colors their souls emitted. Eventually, they made it to the village, but as they were about to sleep in the horse stables that night, a mysterious demon came to ring the bells of hell, and left without saying any word. The following morning, the chief took them to meet Lady Bandai, the priestess of the village. When they got there, the priestess apologized for her appearance, saying that she hasn't been able to use her legs after Tyrone blew her back out. But although Dororo thought she was beautiful, Hyakimaru felt the presence of a demon and began trying to attack her. However, Dororo held him off while the other villagers came to take him away, throwing both of them in prison. As Dororo wondered why he was trying to kill the hot girl, the blind elder revealed his presence, and said they had locked him away for the same reason. After all, he recognized Hyakimaru as the baby that was cast away, and revealed that he also had the ability to see the souls of the demons. Just then, both of them sensed the presence of another demon, and Hyakimaru ran to slash its arm off, before jumping inside a well. Together with Muni, they began heading down the secret tunnels until they arrived at the priestess's room, and Hyakimaru knocked her door down before she began revealing her true form. Immediately, Hyakimaru attempted to launch towards her, but she knocked him away with her tail, and she released all of her arms towards him. After closing the distance, he penetrated her eyes with his swords, but the village chief restrained him in the last instant, and told the demon to run away. As soon as he slashed the cloak down, Hyakimaru began chasing the demon throughout the forest, but Banai was able to trap him down with the bamboo sticks. Before she could kill him, the demon rung the bells of hell again, but Hyakimaru disappeared when she looked back, and launched down from the sky to slash her head, eliminating her in that instant. As Banai revealed her hot form once again, she realized that one of the 12 demons failed in sacrificing him. But before she could keep talking, Hyakimaru pierced her face, killing her for the final time. The demon continued ringing the bells of hell before disintegrating, and when Dororo searched the ground, he saw thousands of gold coins that were buried. This was the money that Banai kept stealing from the adventurers she killed, and the chief revealed that this was the only way their village could continue surviving, so he sold his life to the demons in exchange for the gold. At the same time, 2 of the 12 demons were killed, restoring Hyakimaru's nervous system, and allowing him to be able to hear once again. That night in the forest, the noises from all the animals overwhelmed him. But Dororo wondered how he could hear anything when everywhere was completely silent. So he wrapped a cloth around his ears to muffle the noise, and suggested that they hunt no demons until he was recovered. Just then, Hyakimaru noticed a monster in the forest, and a great bird flew between them. Immediately, he drew his sword, and as the monster returned, he narrowly evaded it. However, it flew towards them again, nearly snatching him up, and the noises from falling leaves distracted him, allowing the bird to knock him into the ground. As it returned, Hyakimaru managed to slash it, but the bird tried carrying him away, and he utilized the opportunity to wound it. But as it returned to end him, Muni appeared at that moment and cut it to pieces in an instant. Just then, Dororo noticed that Hyakimaru was spaced out and tried returning him to his senses, but he was pretty much dead on the inside. The following morning, as Hyakimaru woke up, he began hearing a singing voice and followed it to the river. As he arrived, he realized that the singer was a girl, and the purity in her soul drew him closer to her. As he tried to touch her, she discovered he was blind, but he nearly passed out in her arms, and she noticed Dororo and Muni, thinking they were probably his companions. As they settled in an old abandoned temple, they realized that Hyakimaru was very sick from his injuries, and Muni said he was probably starting to become a real human. As Mio arrived, she told them to stay until Hyakimaru was recovered, and revealed half a dozen orphan kids she was caring for. Just then, the kids appeared before them, and Mio said they were survivors of the war. As Takibo decided to take charge, he commanded the others to leave, and told Mio to get some sleep before her night shift. Later that day, as Dororo decided to meet Takibo, he offered to help him with his duty, but the boy turned him down, saying that he wishes to work as hard as his sister Mio. When Dororo noticed that Muni was starting to leave, he told him that he was going to find a safe path through the forest and would return afterwards. In Daigo's village, a messenger told him that the Sakai clan were waiting at their border, and that they were starting to run out of food as it has not rained in weeks. Just then, Mina appeared, saying that the past was starting to repeat itself. At the temple, Mio decided to check on Hyakimaru, and discovered that he was burning up from a fever. Realizing he needs medication, she promised to bring him some healing potions while returning from her night duty. And just as she began to sing, he wished she wouldn't leave, but would stay by his side forever. Inside the forest, Muni discovered a path through the creek and thought it would make a better home for Mio and the orphans. However, he soon noticed the presence of a demon deep inside a hole, and thought that this place wasn't safe after all. The following day, when Mio returned to the village, she realized that Hyakimaru was waiting outside, and decided to give him the medication she brought. However, he tried telling her to sing instead, and Dororo said her voice would probably awaken his mind. As she began singing, Muni arrived, and as they settled inside, he told them about the area he found in the forest, and said that it would be a good place to hide when the war begins. However, he revealed that a great demon was already living on the land, and that it would only be safe when it was gone. Hearing his words, Hyakimaru began heading towards the forest, and ignored Dororo when he tried to stop him. As Muni realized he was far from recovery, he decided to follow him for support. So with the men gone, Mio revealed that she would be working for both villages that were preparing for war, saying that it was the fastest way to earn more money. However, the boys thought it was too dangerous, so Dororo promised to follow her and protect her if she fell into danger. That evening, as he trailed her into the forest, he realized that her work was developing plot with the soldiers, and was depressed by what he saw, and the amount of things she endured every day. At the same time, Hyakimaru and Muni arrived at the large hole. As they spotted the demon, Hyakimaru drew his swords, but Muni realized he was still sick from his injuries. Muni tried suggesting that he waits until he's recovered, but the monster began drilling the ground, and the sand pulled them deep into the hole. After jumping off the rocks, Hyakimaru flew at the monster, and Muni slashed it from behind, forcing it to turn its attention. As soon as it was distracted, Hyakimaru stabbed its head, but the demon caught him, and began pulling him deep into the ground. Luckily, Muni managed to save him, but Hyakimaru began screaming from a terrible pain, as half of his leg was lost to the demon. That night, as Dororo returned to the temple, he came across Muni and Hyakimaru. As he noticed Hyakimaru's severed leg, he fell from the shock, and Muni revealed that it was eaten by the demon. However, when he realized that Hyakimaru was actually groaning from the pain, Muni told him that he had now also gained his ability to speak. In the morning when Mio arrived, she found Hyakimaru injured and wondered what happened. But Muni told her that he would survive his injury. As she began to clean his wound, Dororo noticed her scars, and ran off at the memory of what he saw. A few minutes later, Takibo found him and wondered why he left, but Dororo thought it was better to keep what he saw a secret. As he asked if he has ever seen Mio at work, Takibo began telling him that his duty was to watch over the remaining orphans, and that they were only able to stay alive because of Mio's sacrifice. At Daigo's village, Tahamaru began demanding to be sent off to the battlefield, but Daigo said he was still just a kid, and told him to have his mom teach him how to play with his small sword.
I beg your pardon?
As Mina appeared, Tahamaru begged her to play with his sword, but she thought he was a spoiled little brat, and ignored everything he said. However, Tahamaru realized she'd been only pretending to care about him ever since he was born, and wondered whose sword she was really worried about. He thought she was definitely hiding a secret, and hoped to eventually discover it. At the temple, the memory of the incident continued flashing across Hayakimaru's mind, and as he tried heading to the forest, he fell from his injury. But Mio hurried to give him her support. To help him relax, she tried asking him to speak, but discovered that he could not say a word, so she began to sing for him. As Mooney spied on them, he realized that Mio's singing voice was calming the demon that was starting to appear inside Hayakimaru's soul. So as he began to leave, he told Dororo that he would stay around the forest in the meantime, and revealed that Hayakimaru's demon flames might one day turn him into a monster. That evening, as Mio began heading to work, she told Dororo that she noticed him the previous night, and said that this was their only means of surviving. So he decided to forgive her, and said that she was actually brave, so he would never hate her for sacrificing herself for all the other kids. Immediately, he ran up to the temple, happy to have finally made peace with her. At the temple, Hayakimaru began sharpening wood to replace his leg, but Dororo decided to feed him his meal, saying that it was the only way he would regain his strength. However, he hoped Hayakimaru would never become a monster, and told him that he was his only friend in the world. By the morning, Hayakimaru had fixed the wood, and was practicing with his sword. As the orphans admired his sword arms, they decided to show him several hidden swords, and Takibo revealed that they found them on the battlefield. At the same time, Mio began heading to work, but a soldier from the Ishikawa clan spotted her and thought she was probably a spy. On that night, with all the other kids asleep, Dororo realized that Hayakimaru had left the temple, and thought he must have gone to face off with the demon. At the hole, Hayakimaru drew his swords and was ready for the battle. As he slid into the hole, he began dodging the demon's claws, and it started raining at the same time. As the beast bit off his leg again, he stabbed it right in the mouth and jumped very high before slaying it in an instant. At that moment, the rain stopped and Daigo's statue split in half. When Mio arrived at the temple, Takibo told her that Hayakimaru had gone off to fight the monster, so she hurried immediately. Just then, a bunch of Ishikawa soldiers arrived and followed her to the temple. As Hayakimaru and Dororo began returning home, the boy was happy to see his leg restored. But after hearing those words, Hayakimaru realized that the temple was burning, as the soldiers slayed the orphans without any mercy. When Dororo arrived, he discovered that all of his friends were dead, and the leader wondered if he was one of the spies. He said that Mio was spotted entering the enemy's camp right after leaving them, so he thought she was selling them off. Thinking he could save her, Dororo began running to her, but the man caught him and threw him to the ground. However, as he tried to end him, Hayakimaru sliced off his hand, so the men surrounded him immediately. At that moment, Hayakimaru discovered that Mio was about to die, and the realization sent him into a frenzy. So he stabbed the first soldier, and began killing the rest of them as the anger overtook him, driven by madness and revenge. At the sight of this, Dororo remembered Muni's words, and thought Hayakimaru might end up becoming a monster, so he stopped him before he could slay the leader, allowing the man to escape. As he revealed a pouch, Dororo told him that it was filled with seed rice, and said that it was Mio's dream to one day create a rice farm for the children, so she could feed them rice paddies. After all, none of them had ever eaten anything except burnt rice paddies after the war, so he told him to hang on to it, and to never forget Mio's dreams. After hearing those words, Hayakimaru let out his first word and said, Mio. And they buried all the bodies before leaving the temple. As they resumed their travels, the only thing they kept on hearing was Mio's sweet voice singing, pushing them to keep moving forward in their miserable lives. When it was night, Dororo tried asking if Hayakimaru was hungry, but he only held on to the pouch. Before long, Dororo began hearing voices in the forest, and thought two lovebirds were probably developing plot behind the bushes. As he grew angry at the thought, he began hurling stones at the trees, but a basket nearly crushed him. Just then, he noticed a spider before him, and Hayakimaru rushed up the tree immediately. In an instant, he slashed the webs, and a man fell to the ground. But Dororo realized that he has probably lost his mind. As Hayakimaru flew at the monster, He slashed it instantly, but it cast a web and bound him to a tree before escaping immediately. Later that night, as they spotted a village, Dororo suggested they stay there for the night, and the monster thought it was the best place for her to recover. When they arrived at the village, they discovered that they needed a pass to enter, and a guard told them that there was a kidnapper abducting the villagers. In the morning, a villager noticed the lady on the roadside, but she pushed him away and pretended to be afraid. As he noticed she was sick, he invited her to his home, saying he would offer her some food. However, she thought it was her chance to drain his life force and realized she could waste him like an empty doll. At his home, he introduced himself as Yajiro and wondered if she has a name. When she said that she doesn't have one, he decided to name her Ohagi. Believing she was hungry, he decided to serve her a bowl of rice, and she thought that it was delicious. As he wondered where she was from, she told him to mind his fucking business and said that she would leave his hellhole once she regains her full strength. Just then, he began to leave, saying he would return when it was dark, and she thought he was a mysterious man. At night, as Yajiro arrived home, he noticed that Ohage's sickness was getting worse, and wondered if she hasn't eaten all day. Right then, he spotted a cockroach, and decided to release it outside. At the sight of this, Ohagi wondered why he decided to spare it unlike every other human in his right mind, so he told her that every life was special. His words impressed her, and she told him that she has never met anyone like him. However, as they slept that night, she crawled to his spot, and tried to eat him out, but discovered that she was hungry for food, and decided to eat the rest of her meal before going back to bed. She thought he was a special human and wished to know everything about him. When it was morning, Dororo was exhausted from scouting the village and wondered where the spider could be hiding. However, later that day, Dororo discovered that another villager has gone missing, but wondered how it was possible, seeing as there was no sign of any monster. That night, Yajiro realized that Ohagi has gotten even worse, and told her that they have no doctors in the village. On top of that, they need a traveler's pass before she could leave, so he offered to sneak her outside. Meanwhile, Hayakimaru and Dororo were chewing on weeds for dinner, and Dororo thought they would definitely starve to death if they continued to stay in the village. At the same time, Yajiro and Ohagi began hurrying to the secret exit, but before long, they came across Hayakimaru and Dororo. Realizing who they were, Ohagi wondered if they were waiting to slay her, but this only made Dororo discover that she was the spider, and he commanded Hayakimaru to attack her. However, Yajiro decided to protect her, and said that he was actually the kidnapper. Just then, the guards appeared and threatened to execute Yajiro for sneaking people out of the village. Dororo tried saying that he found him first and deserves the reward, but the leader revealed that there was never a reward in the first place, and that it was merely a scam to make the people confess. As he commanded his men to capture them, Ohagi bound the men with her webs and consumed their life force immediately. Just as Hayakimaru sensed her red soul glowing again, he drew his sword and tried to attack her, but she bound him with her cloak and ran away with her man. As Dororo freed him, Hayakimaru ran after them, and a guard called for the others with a whistle. Eager to escape, Ohagi cast a web to the top of the mountain and pulled them up. As Yajiro realized she had regained her strength, he began saying that he was probably useless to her now, but she told him that she wants him by her side forever. Yajiro wondered if she kills humans after draining their life force, but she told him that she always spares their life, but continues to suck their life force every single time. This was all Yajiro wanted to hear, so he offered himself to her, because he was tired of his lonely life anyway. Eventually, they arrived at the secret cave, and Yajiro told her to find her way to the exit, but she suggested that they escape together. After all, his identity was exposed already, and she thought he would never be safe here. However, just as he agreed, arrows pierced his body, and Ohagi realized that the soldiers had found them. As she grew angry, she cancelled the arrows and bound the men, immediately draining their life force. At that moment, she transformed into the spider and captured the others, but Hayakimaru cut her web. As he sliced off her leg, she knocked him away, and told Yajiro that she would not abandon him. However, when Hayakimaru was unwilling to allow her to escape, Yajiro asked him to spare her life, and said that he wants to stay with her forever, so Hayakimaru decided to leave her alone. The next day, they continued their travel, and Dororo noticed that Hayakimaru was starting to smile. A few days later, Dororo began wondering why Hayakimaru was not talking to him, since he had already regained the ability to speak. As they noticed some weird-looking people carrying a girl to the top of the mountain, Dororo thought it was probably a bridal parade, but wondered why the bride was sad. Just then, a boy slid down the mountain, hoping to stop the group, but the wind blew his arrow away. Before he could fire another one, Dororo stopped him, saying that he would not allow him to eliminate the beautiful bride. However, the boy thought he was a clueless moron, and told him that the girl was his sister, but was being married off to a monster. As he tried leaving, Dororo offered to support him, saying that Hayakimaru could defeat any monster. Before long, they arrived at the top of the mountain, and Saru revealed a dark mysterious cloud over their village. He said that the monster was called the Nakasergumo, and that it appears almost every day to devour their villagers. So to save their own skin, they began offering a girl to the demon, and managed to keep the village safe. However, Dororo thought it made no sense, and wondered why girls were specifically being offered to the monster. But even Saru had no idea. Thinking he could scam the fuck out of this loser, Dororo offered to rescue her, but said that it wouldn't be for free, so Saru decided to pay him with worms and a tiny piece of gold. As Dororo realized he could probably sell it, Saru offered to give him more of it if they succeeded, so he agreed to help him, and Saru introduced himself. A few hours later, when the other villagers had returned, Dororo and Saru knocked out the guards, and Saru decided to free Genie. However, his sister told him that she could not leave the mountain, as she was afraid that the demon would devour the entire village in her place. Saru tried telling her to save her own skin, but she told him that her life was far less important than everyone else's. Just then, Dororo began telling her that they would slay the monster, and Hayakimaru drew his sword to prove he was ready. At that moment, the dark cloud began rising towards them, and the guards nearly pissed themselves. In an instant, they were sucked into the clouds, and their devoured bodies were dumped to the ground. As they heard a roar, Dororo tried telling Hayakimaru that the demon was inside the clouds, but his vision was surrounded by a wall of evil flame. Before they knew it, a monstrous centipede descended from the clouds, looking to devour Saru, but Genie pushed him out of the way, and was swallowed in his place. At the sight of the huge monster, Dororo wondered if they even stood a chance. However, as it returned, Dororo tried warning Hayakimaru, but he still could not see shit. Luckily, heated water sprung out of a geyser and revealed a ray of light in the darkness, scaring off the demon, and the dark clouds vanished instantly. However, Saru was sad with his sister being killed, realizing he would never see her again. So Dororo decided to follow him home, but realized he was living in the mountains, and Saru told him that he lives on his own. As he wondered how they could avenge her, Dororo said that he has just the perfect plan, but revealed that Hayakimaru was probably useless at this point. At that moment, they realized that the cloud has expanded, and ashes began falling from the sky. As they discovered it was the skin from the centipede, they realized that it was growing even bigger in size. Seeing how massive it was, Saru thought they couldn't possibly stand a chance, but Dororo revealed that the sunlight was its weakness. So the following day, Dororo pretended to be a new bride, and successfully lured out the monster. Immediately, he started running away, and as he dodged the centipede, he jumped into a hole. But he emerged outside to draw its attention, and started running away again. However, as he slipped, the monster tried devouring him at that instant, but he luckily made it into the hole. At the same time, Saru was waiting on the mountain, and just as he spotted the monster, he launched a flaming arrow at the geyser, causing it to erupt into a mighty explosion, burning up the monster. However, just before the sun appeared, it quenched the fire, and released more fumes to cloud the area before rising high for the kill. At that moment, Hayakimaru drew its attention with a rock, and launched his arrow at the monster. As he fired another and a third arrow, he rushed at it and slashed its face, causing it to crash. However, it was still alive, and he narrowly dodged its tentacle before getting knocked away. Dororo realized he could draw Hayakimaru's attention towards the monster, so he jumped down the mountain, landing on top of it, and screamed at Hayakimaru to follow the sound of his voice. As the monster hurried away, crashing through a rock, a stone knocked Dororo unconscious. Just then, Hayakimaru began screaming, desperate to draw its attention, but was knocked away. Even so, he continued screaming, and managed to stop the demon before it devoured him. As he took the onslaught, the beast threw him high into the sky, but Dororo directed him with his voice, and he pierced its eye, forcing it to emerge from the clouds, and the sunlight began molting its skin. Right then, Hayakimaru jumped inside its mouth and ripped it in half instantly, causing it to vanish. With the monster slain, Dororo was happy to have survived the battle, as they fell into a river. A few moments later, Saru spotted Genie inside the water and realized that she was still alive, so he was happy to be reunited with her. Right then, Hayakimaru began to groan, and his fake nose fell into the water, allowing a real nose to grow in its place. A few minutes later, as Saru gave Dororo the remaining gold he promised, he realized that it was a rotten piece of food, and wondered how they would survive on this. But Genie decided to thank him with a flower. As they began leaving the mountain, Hayakimaru smelled the flower and said Dororo's name for the first time. When he heard that, Dororo realized Hayakimaru was starting to regain his full humanity. Later that day, as Hayakimaru sniffed a flower, he decided to smell Dororo's face, but he pushed him away and fell from exhaustion. As he tried to stand, he fell again, and Hayakimaru realized that something was definitely wrong with him. So he carried him to a nearby village, and tried asking for help from a farmer, but the man ignored him. As he met another man, he tried telling him that Hayakimaru was really sick, but the man told him that he's not a doctor, and decided to leave. Having nowhere else to go, Hayakimaru left him on the ground, and Dororo remembered that this was exactly how his mother died. Luckily, a woman found them and decided to take them home. As Dororo regained consciousness, he thought Hyakkimaru must have abandoned him and tried to leave, but she managed to calm him down. Just then, she realized that Dororo was actually a girl. But as she noticed the manjushagi flower, Dororo revealed that it reminds her of her parents, and this made her sad. 6 years ago, her father was the leader of a group of warriors who fought to eliminate the samurais for destroying their village during the war, but was led to a trap by her evil uncle to kill all of them. With all his men dead, one of the soldiers stabbed her father from the back, but he took him with him to the afterlife, and they watched as the village burned before them. Being the only 2 surviving members, her mother began caring for Dororo on her own. But as they traveled for weeks without any food, her mother passed out in a field full of manjushagi flowers, and she begged Dororo to be strong and to survive until the war was over. So her words inspired Dororo to survive, and she told the woman that she would never give up. As she wondered how the girl traveled for weeks without any proper food, she told Hyakkimaru that his companion was actually a girl. A few days later, as they began to leave the village, Dororo wondered if Hyakkimaru has discovered that she was a girl, but he merely ignored her secret. At Daigo's village, a messenger began telling him that his abandoned baby may have survived, and that a commander in their army was attacked by a mysterious man with prosthetic arms. Hearing these words, Daigo wondered if his son could possibly be alive. Later that day, a chief told him that it hasn't rained in 2 months, and he thought all their rice fields would begin dying from the drought soon. At the same time, another chief revealed that a new clan were preparing to wage a war against them, and Daigo thought it couldn't possibly get any worse. So he rode off to his temple, thinking that Hyakkimaru was definitely responsible for the broken statues, as he was starting to reclaim his body parts. Before his eyes, a mystical smoke revealed Hyakkimaru, and Daigo realized he was right after all. Meanwhile in the forest, Hyakkimaru charged at a monster and slayed it in an instant. A few minutes later, as Dororo washed the blood off his clothes, she began suggesting that they visit the nearby village for some food. Just then, she noticed his pouch and wondered if it was his family's crest, but Hyakkimaru only stared at it. At Daigo's village, Tahamaru decided to ask the messenger about the baby he's been looking for, so the man told him that the baby disappeared 16 years ago. However, when he asked him why he was looking for the baby, the man decided to bite off his tongue, and Tahamaru realized that the secret was probably very bad. So that evening, he decided to confront his father, demanding to know why he's been asking for a baby. However, Daigo screamed at him to f*** off, and told him to stick his ugly nose into his own business. The following day, as his men found him on the island shore, Tahamaru began telling them that his father probably thought he was still a kid, and said that he must prove himself to everyone. At that moment, he noticed several villagers on the shore, and decided to ask if they were under attack. One of the villagers told him that they were being eaten up by a monster inside the lake, and said that they would never be safe with the monster alive. Tahamaru realized that this was his perfect opportunity to prove himself, so he told them that he would annihilate the monster, and his men followed him for support. That evening, as they began rowing their boats to the center of the lake, the fishermen noticed that the oar was stuck, and the boat stopped moving. At that moment, Tahamaru realized that the monster was already approaching, and just then, it emerged from the water, and the villagers thought it would make them its dinner. Immediately, they tied their boats to a rope and successfully held it to the spot. As the beast grew angry, Tahamaru drew his sword and was ready to slay it. So he jumped off to another boat, and the monster crab tried to devour a villager, but he managed to escape. As Mutsu fired an arrow at the beast, Tahamaru jumped on another boat and split its claw in an instant before Hyogo cracked its shell. Tahamaru tried going for the kill, but the monster withdrew into the water and they watched it vanish. However, it began stabbing their boats, and Tahamaru realized that it was trying to sink them, so he commanded the men to pull the boats towards the shore. On the island, Mutsu told Tahamaru that they could hardly defeat the beast inside the water, and suggested that they come up with a better plan. Later that evening, he suggested that they throw explosives into the monster's mouth, saying that it would definitely blow it to smithereens. However, Tahamaru was unwilling to lose his men, and said that he would come up with a better plan. Just then, he spotted something in the distance, and Hyogo raised him higher so that he would see better. At that moment, he discovered the perfect plan, and was certain that the monster was as good as dead. So the following day, the people began cutting wood and digging a new path around the island, and eventually created a wooden gate to seal all the water. When they were done, they decided to lure the monster with a boat before sealing it outside. At Tahamaru's command, the villagers cut off the ropes, opening up the sluice, and the lake flowed into another area, leaving the beast exposed. As they prepared to slay it, the beast began roaring, but Tahamaru charged at it with his men, and dodged its claw before splitting its leg. As Hyogo sliced another, Mutsu fired arrows at it, and eventually nailed its head, weakening the monster. At this realization, the villagers began cheering, and Tahamaru sliced its body, so they began throwing stones at the beast. However, as Tahamaru tried to end it, the crab threw a rock at the gate, and he realized they were about to lose their advantage. So he directed the men to protect the gate, but the beast threw another rock that caused the water to start gushing. Determined to fight anyway, Tahamaru stabbed his sword into the ground, but the water carried away the villagers. Luckily, Hyogo managed to save them before they were eaten, and threw one of them to the island, before tossing the others. With the monster nearly devouring him, Tahamaru tried going for his rescue, but Hyakimaru rushed out of nowhere, and slayed the monster instantly before he slashed it. As Tahamaru wondered who killed it first, his men arrived, and pulled him onto their boat. Just as they rowed away, he noticed Hyakimaru, and wondered just how powerful he must be to slay the monster. Later on the island, Tahamaru demanded to know who Hyakimaru was, but Dororo told him to be grateful that they managed to save their asses, so he thanked him, but wondered why Hyakimaru was only staring at him. Dororo told him that he was blind, and said that he could only see with his soul, but she demanded their broke asses pay up for saving them, so Tahamaru gave her some silver coins. As Dororo wondered how they could find the nearby village they've been looking for, Tahamaru pointed towards his village. However, as they began heading towards the village, Hyakimaru remembered his soul, and wondered if he had ever met him before. Inside the village, as a seer noticed them, she began screaming that the demon child has arrived to destroy them all, before running away. At the same time, Dororo realized the town was very peaceful, and noticed that everyone was happy. At that moment, he saw Mooney in the crowd, and wondered how he managed to find this village. A few minutes later, as they sat at a stream, Mooney revealed that the statue of the demons were inside Dago's temple, and noticed that Hyakimaru's soul was tainted with the presence of demons, so he realized that he had been killing humans. As he began to leave, he warned Dororo to be careful, realizing the demon inside him may completely take over him. Meanwhile, at Dago's palace, Mutsu told him that they were saved by a mysterious man in prostheses, and said that he travels across villages looking for demons to slay. Just as he revealed his name, Mina realized he was actually their son, and was overwhelmed by the discovery. On the other hand, Dororo and Hyakimaru began leaving the village, hoping to find the monster that was terrorizing the villagers. As they noticed the tall wall before them, Hyakimaru sensed the presence of a demon around it, and said that it was really powerful. Just then, a boy appeared before them, nearly scaring the shit out of Dororo, and began saying that they would be killed if they tried to cross to the other side. As they noticed the Asakura soldiers, a neighboring clan who were at war with the Ishikawa clan, the boy revealed that they would shoot them once they tried to cross over to their land. However, Dororo was determined not to leave, and told him that they came to slay Banman, the powerful monster that was terrorizing the area. Later that day, as the boy, Sukuroku, began to make soup, he revealed that this site used to be his home before the wall was built. They had stopped him from returning home, and said that the territory now belongs to the Asakura clan. However, he was bent on crossing to the other side, and said that he intends to reunite with his family. So Dororo offered to help him, and said that they would sneak him in at night. But he told him that demons always surround the area, and would devour everyone in sight. Even so, Dororo was not afraid, and said that her demon-slaying buddy would take care of the monster. At Dago's palace, Mina wondered where he was heading to, afraid that he intends to kill Hyakimaru to save his worthless village. She told him that he was being punished for sacrificing his own son 16 years ago, but Dago thought none of it matters, and decided to leave anyway. That night, as the Asakura soldiers left their post, the boys began hearing noises from the monsters. Before their eyes, a flaming demon descended from the sky, and they thought it was a fox. Sukuroku revealed that it was the Banman monster that was terrorizing everyone in the area. And at that moment, over a dozen flames appeared before them, and transformed into foxes. As a demon jumped at Hyakimaru, he slashed it at once, and began slashing the other demons. However, the lead fox summoned the others, and more spirits appeared in the sky, flying towards Hyakimaru at the same time. As he slashed them, another demon bruised his face, so Dororo began throwing rocks from the side, causing them to vanish, and Hyakimaru slayed more of them. Realizing his opportunity, Sukuroku began running to the other side, but Dororo thought it was too dangerous. As he tried pursuing him, a demon narrowly missed him, but as it returned to devour him, Hyakimaru rushed in and killed it instantly. So Dororo hurried away, and the demons merged into a 10-tailed fox. As he dodged fireballs, the fox managed to pin him to the ground. Just as it tried to devour him, he kicked it away and slashed it, before a bunch of arrows scared it off, causing it to disappear. Inside the village, Tahamaru began looking for Hyakimaru, thinking he would help him to discover his family's secret, but noticed the seer. As she spotted him, she began to freak out like a useless nutcase, saying that the demon child has returned to slay Dago. As he demanded to know what she meant, she told him that it was the curse of demons, and that the cursed child has returned to curse Dago and the village. At the same time, Dororo was screaming for Sukuroku in the forest, but soon realized that he has been captured by the soldiers. At the wall, Hyakimaru realized that an army was before him, and sensed the power of the demons inside Daigo's soul. As he asked who he was, one of the men began calling him a useless moron for speaking directly to Daigo. In an instant, Hyakimaru knocked their torches and flashed to feel Daigo's soul. As Daigo realized that he was truly his cursed son, he tried to strike him, but he jumped away immediately. As he wondered how he managed to survive on his own, he called him a half-born demon child and commanded his men to eliminate him.